Now, good evening. Welcome everybody at the Leibniz University, the architecture faculty. So we have a conference today in the series of the Tuesday at 7, dienstags 7. And this time the conference is part of the Studio Kempe-Till. I'm André Kempe, one of the two professors of the chair, and we are organizing these lectures in the framework of our program of the studio called Learning Landscapes. And we are very, very happy and proud that we tonight could win Alexandre Theriot from Bruther to be with us, to give us a lecture about the work of Bruther. Just to shortly introduce you the office. Bruther is an architecture office from France, from Paris actually. Has been founded in 2007 by Alexandre and Stéphanie Bru. Alexandre Theriot and Stéphanie Bru. And since then they could build up quite a remarkable body of works, which is very impressive. So they built several kind of quite known public buildings, like for instance the New Generation Research Center in Caen in France, or for instance Cultural and Sports Center in Saint-Blaise in Paris, or for instance researchers housing in Cité Universitaire in Paris. Or recently, a student housing in Palaiseau, in Grand Paris, in Greater Paris, and some other also housing projects in Paris. Their work has been awarded with nominations for the Mies van der Rohe Award. They have won the Équerre d'Argent, the best or the most known French architecture award in the country. And they are working not only in France, they work also in Switzerland, in Belgium, and they work in Germany. So they have one, for instance, a project in Hamburg. They have made a Croquis, so they are quite largely published, and they're also teaching. So Alexandre is currently a professor at the ETH in Zurich, in Switzerland. He was also teaching at the EPF and in Düsseldorf at the PBSA, Peter Barron School of Architecture. So he's also an experienced teacher. And I would really like to pass the microphone to Alexandre. Thank you a lot, and we are very happy to have you here.
Okay, thank you, André. Good evening, everyone. So, of course, it's, let's say, not my first lecture or virtual lecture, but I have to say that it's sometimes quite comfortable just by talking to my screen. But André invited us, and so it was difficult to, let's say, we don't want to do this lecture, but I'm really glad to be here. But let's say, so this is the context, so it's important to react and to find different means to continue to give lectures or just to find opportunities. So I don't know who you are, I don't see you, I just see my screen and my notes. So I will start and I will do the lecture like this, trying to express and to explain what we try to do for a couple of years with Stéphanie in our daily practice. So it's of course the question of a story, it's a question of the narrative dimension of our practice in a very basic approach. So when we have to present our work, it's time probably to us to question our production, our methodology, and the strong lines that define the buildings we produce. So the first question is to know what we ourselves retain and what points we want to insist on. So what is certain is that for us, architecture is above all a story, a narrative that takes those who build it and those who use it in a very particular and unique way. So we asked ourselves, how do we tell a story that is actually made up of a multitude of stories? So we can also find this idea in Stephen Shaw's photographic work. And in this set of photographs called American Surfaces, so he decided to illustrate what America is for him through a collection of very diverse pictures. Or in the work by the French author Raymond Queneau, who wrote a very short story, 99 times, using 99 different writing styles. And actually, with this book, the author tells that there are at least 99 possible aspects of the same story, depending on its point of view, depending on what one wants to insist on. In fact, this introduction to say that the gathering of small stories that paint the portrait of a great story has always pleased us. And this is something that is rarely talked about, and yet it's particularly important to us. Which format do we choose to talk about our practice? So rather than presenting a best of our buildings, we prefer to present all of these through what we have called tales of contemporaneity. And those chapters are together a sort of journey through images, sometimes references, but mostly pictures of our projects. So it is a journey that will be more suggestive or narrative than descriptive. It is a set of small stories, all independent of each other, which are just a translation of different aspects, different themes, and different methods that make up our whole architecture without any necessary hierarchy. So every day, every problem, issue, question is finally speak about the same subject. Our goal is to communicate more the breaches and the entrenchments of the architecture we produce than a detailed view of each of our buildings or even their purpose. So there are few of the thousands of possible chapters that could be told to talk about a practice, a building, a place. It is just a few ways to honestly explain how we work without theorizing anything. As humans in the new millennium, the challenge we faced are infinite, pressing, affecting all scales, all societies, all economies, all policies, all organizations, all species, and those affecting all dreams, duties, constraints, projects, whether collective or personal. So the events are multiple and the instabilities are infinite. The French philosopher Michel Serres points out that the division between the literary and scientific fields is dangerous. The immense quality of architecture lies, among other things, in its ability to reconcile all fields. The objective of our practice and of our teaching is to understand contemporaneity, to understand it to our measure. So the great paradox of the days we are living is surely the fact that the precariousness of the world is growing at the proportional speed from an individualistic and illusory comfort that has become an absolute priority. So living style have become a succession of excesses, more and more projects, more and more money, more travel, more and more pictures, selfie, things to do, networks, connections, control, ambitious success, food, material goods, innovations, changes, disruptions, acceleration. To hold worthless things, we have forgotten what we really care about. As Paul Virilio said, a society that recklessly privileges the present real time to the detriment of the past and the future also favors accidents, since at any moment anything happens, and most often unexpectedly. A civilization that implements immediacy, ubiquity, and instantaneity stages accidents, disasters. So as a result, a call for economical behavior is raised unanimous without any changing. Words say economy of means, deeds say excess. So which mantra should we build, should we follow? What is to be understood? So in this contemporary frenzy, we have to behavior as sponges. The question is to understand how to do all those political, economic, and ecological facts, which on the surface do not systematically call for material built responses, influence the architecture we make. How do they influence architecture? How do we act? We do react. The current time is made up of contradictions, so that contradictions is the basis of our practice. In particular, we rely heavily on the tension between notions of economy and excess in the development of our projects and our teaching. So in general, this oxymoron illustrates the fact that we accept conceptual polarities as long as we ourselves are a cursor in constant movement between those polarities. This short video of a pavilion we built last year in Sao Paulo for the Architectural Biennale represents the meeting between economies and excesses that we are putting in place in our practice. The pavilion is an extremely simple device, while revealing this ultra-present economy, which highlights the bodies, the situation, retain an excessive dimension. We like these tensions, this balance. This notion of balance is crucial in order to not stay blocked on a set idea, but instead size the occasions, control them, and allow the situations and responses to evolve. So reconciling contradictions is our intuitive way of working and doing things. The old term alchemy corresponds to the science of quantities. It refers to the balance between given quantities. As architects, so we believe that we practice the same science, that all actions undertaken must reflect a precise measure resulting from an accurate calculation. In the main, the balance is between analytics and sensitivity. The first aspect of an architectural project is the place in which it is built. So we are interested in places that are usually set aside, in places that are not glamorous. In French, the term usagé means already used and damaged at the same time. What we therefore call paysages usagés are ultimately the popular places of everyday life that affect the greatest number of people and that are most relevant to contemporary issues. And our constant objective is to extract the best from those places, to magnify them through each decision we take. Indeed, the relationship with the environment in which we act plays a crucial role. This is one of the things we also try to convey in our teaching. So beyond the physical characteristics of a site, how to watch a territory, how to look at its dynamics, which are usually invisible. To understand the agents that influence the place, to learn how to look carefully at the things around them. Some things, the project's plot are placed in extreme situations. We believe that the suburban situations are the most stimulating ones. Suburban environments create territorial situations that are too often currently rejected by the city without any permeability to uses. So we are witnessing poor urban planning, and we work at an architectural scale to make those dismissed places livable and hopefully enjoyable. I live. The twilight of the place, the exiguous present, the horizon of waiting, the coastline of appearances, the torments of the hand. I keep resilience, the connection of what is inexorably divided, the evocation of what was, the revitalization of what was declared dead. I keep the endless list, the suspended question, the urgency, the anachronism, the perpetual journey, the flexibility, the key to the future hidden in the past, the elusive border between the not yet and the not at all, the advance of time over itself. Finally, I keep the modern collection, the string of the existing, the woven and the ordered structure, the immediate readability, the compact size, the simplicity and economy, the overflowing enthusiasm, the nature all around, the playful dimension, the possibility of change, the freedom to act, the expanding universe. We do not reject what is usually considered commonplace and unattractive features. On the contrary, we integrate and transform them into key elements as stable shelters in changing places. Our aim is always to offer to inhabitants the opportunity to get a new relationship with their living space through projects that both reveal and put aside the reality of the city. At the building scale, our method is to put together in an extremely elementary way. We are convinced that immutable rules do not exist, neither do untouchable conventions. A friend called this position statement the translation of acts or actions. And he was right, because that's exactly what we do. We act. We make decisions that ensure our freedom. Those decisions have formal and aesthetic consequences, but they are not motivated by them. They often manifest themselves through ad hoc interventions that in reality allows us to continually prove that it is possible to diffuse subjects referring to subjectivity. We assume that certain things, decisions, actions, interventions may have absolutely no reason to exist. Others have reasons to exist, of course, even most of them, but some just don't. This doesn't mean that they are not thoughtful. This means that they exist below and beyond justifications, and they crystallize an initiative. It is the reorganization of existing things, unexpected, innovative, intuitive reorganization, sometimes seemingly wobbly, often effective and systematically creating new associations which establish architectural devices. So those devices are intimately linked to what could be described in our buildings as entities that go against usual gaze. Objects, say, that are of the order of what is generally forbidden are ordinarily set aside. So we defend ourselves from optimization and rationality. We sometimes look for inconsistencies. In this reorganization of elements, indifferent to any submission to already standardized and identified regimes, our buildings propose what one could commonly only imagine. And so they become extraordinary blends of the familiar and the unseen, the known and the unknown. Each element of a project can be considered as independent from all other elements. So we are interested in all the features that make up a project. We focus and work on them one by one, almost independently from each other. But in reality, it becomes particularly interesting when we proceed in an abyssal setting of this process. The way we treat details is the same we treat other elements in plan. We just apply the same method at any scale. In our project's floor plans, it is therefore clear that each element retains its own technical and aesthetic autonomy. So the structure, system, partitions, facades, and so on can be those but easily identified as independent of each other. Amongst all the elements that make up a project, structure is certainly the main component. Our buildings are like skeletons. So the structures are the hosts of various other devices, which will specify the spaces, the atmospheres, the places. But the structure themselves are open and allow evolutions, which reinforces the importance of their autonomy. The two main spatial typologies are the serving and the served spaces. But the distinction between typologies of space never restricted to a precise form, and in other projects, the same system can be read through complex forms. However, we believe that autonomy is receivable in its radicalism only because it is not absolute. It exists exclusively to better meet other forms of autonomy. Because in addition to all architectural devices, other elements are unavoidably added. Notably, elements that are linked to uses or to appropriation. Those elements often do not belong to the same vocabulary and reinforce the autonomy between components. As everybody else, we have at our disposal an imaginary made out of various elements that belongs to diversified fields. Those elements create an atlas disposable, a database which evolves and changes in the meantime we use it. So once all the devices have been treated autonomously, the aim is to allow those elements to cohabitate. The target is to find a way to make them meet. So we can say that on a different scale, our same instinct of handmade pushes us to proceed by assembling, just like making a collage. In a way, for us, a project is in reality an infinity of projects, an agglomeration of projects that are put together. This basically reflects our perpetual and voluntary search for a kind of instability, at once formal, constructive, and programmatic, that we wish to be tangible in each of our productions. And if we value this instability, it is because it is linked to the question of the cohabitation of differences. Bringing differences together means highlighting the otherness and the richness they offer. This leads to the notion of subjectivity. Indeed, the autonomous treatment followed by the assembling makes it possible to carry out this assembly spontaneously and thus to move away from preconceived ideas on what should be done. In two words, what we are describing here in different ways, it is what we call putting together one more time. This formula has become a leitmotif in our practice. We show how a column means the underside of a slab, or here how a tie rod takes place in the front of a window. But this assembly reasoning also works with the position of a light, or even in the relationship between a curtain, a beam, and the color of a wall. So putting together illustrates not only the almost literal description of our approach, but also because it symbolically retraces a much deeper will that we have of unity, of peaceful and successful encounter, a will that is found well beyond the assembly between the material elements, since it touches areas entirely detached from any possible quantification. Anyhow, all what I mentioned here corresponds to the method that is ours as architects. But the most important thing for us is to create possibilities. Architecture cannot be a meta language. We have to settle the social question of uses in it. So in the temporal question, what interests us is how our buildings will be able to adapt when facing changes of societies and sites in which they are built. Though the characteristic of our time is to be particularly unstable. And as we cannot anticipate the future, we decide to bet on the adaptability of spaces and devices and structures. So we believe that the space, which is the most powerful tool for architects, has to be a frame offering various uses. So therefore, we observed that the spaces that we considered as successful are the ones that are grabbed by people, that are used in the most diverse ways, and especially in ways that were not designed to host. So contemporaneity leads people to move all the time, to change all the time, to adapt all the time. So buildings must therefore reflect this attitude, those needs. So we suggest that this is flexibility that ensures a long service life for the buildings. We want very many ways to use and arrange the mega floors of the buildings. Our goal is to manage to bypass the program, or to at least what is limiting in the programmatic constraints to allow all uses. And then multiplicity of uses allow people to have an impact and to contaminate the buildings, making them even more interesting and creating sometimes new situations in those built situations. So comes necessarily a moment we don't have a tech on our projects anymore. The moment belongs to the temporality of after. This temporality justifies or condemns everything that we have done to complete the building. It is the moment after the delivery, the moments when finally the building faces reality and has to be successful. So there is what we do, and there are the reasons why we do it. So everything we described previously have been done through defended for this ultimate release. So we think that uses are more important than functions. So we have to do everything in order to let the release and do the appropriation happen quietly. So our buildings are about letting events happen. We count on the spaces we create. We want them to ensure a good daily life. We want them to be pleasant and to offer positive perspectives. So let's talk about another important and more pragmatic aspect of our, let's call it, posture. So as Rem Koolhaas underlined it in 1992, more than 30% of any architectural project belongs to technical aspects and is often not part of architectural thoughts. So our posture is to consider technique as a lever to improve architectural features. So technique is very broad, and we consider it in its broader sense. So this inclusion concerns technical objects as well as technological improvements. The humans are intrinsically linked to technique. Technique is even more influencing our way of living. So let's apologize it, let's criticize it, let's transform it, but let's focus on it in any projects or thoughts. So technique can be a lever, but can also be dangerous if used badly. So it is why we like the definition of technique as a pharmacon, which means that technique is both a poison or a cure. Technical systems make it increasingly possible to control and modify the environments in which we operate and live. Those technical advances have a materiality, a complexity that naturally impact spaces and architecture more generally. Whether it is a matter of taking a stand to control and not to control the environment, being aware of the possibility of a building's influence on the relations between inside and outside makes it possible to take a serious look at the mechanisms and features controlling those relations. By developing advanced technical knowledge of those devices, it is then possible to include them fully in the projects, to grant them the status of full-fledged space mediators. To quote the French philosopher Gilbert Simondon, the technical object should not become a wealth in any case, but must remain a tool, almost a friend in our relationship to the world. And so the buildings themselves become technical objects in their own right. The materialization of the technical aspects of a building is usually set aside, considered negligible, even negative. So we always choose to use the consistent elements as parts that shape the building itself as architectural elements. So it allows to innocently but consciously outline the technical performances required to avoid the different constraints that any project is faced with and to highlight its efficiency. The whole technical and maintenance dimension is those revealed, not so much in a concern for staging, but simply because it contributes to a certain authenticity. The technical objects that are necessarily part of a building represents for us the opportunity to create new spatial features, new situations, and to enrich a place. All those elements, we work on them and highlight them, they become manifestation of the will of giving importance to the negligate. We decide to show everything that makes up the buildings without adding elements that should serve to hide them. The technical skills are always key. They are a resource that we turn to in all project phases, and they allow us to position ourselves towards openness, innovation. They complete the reorganization of elements that we evocate earlier. They allow the reorganization, bring material, concrete answers. And more than anything, we consider that engineering is not against poetry, but on the contrary, that we have to make them coexist. Once again, it is an attitude that we try to convey in our practice and teaching, and students manage to grasp it and produce constructive situations that highlight technique, engineering, and structure. Because indeed, the technique is also the structure. And as said before, structure is the skeleton of the building. That's why and how it stands, what it is made of. In this sense, structure is the primary condition of an architectural device in our point of view, of course. Structure has to be essential, but should not dictate the manners to use the building. It has to merge to create a whole. On the other hand, we never design any facades. So for us, they do not involve composition work. They are systematically seeking both neutrality and performance. They are literally the skin of the buildings, and the result of this approach that has not been thought as a composition, but as a positive intermediary between this inside and outside the project. So in this construction, we like to say that the window is a wall. What was interesting in this case was to find a way to propose a window that should not only be a hole in a wall, but instead become a spatial adjustment, a neutral and generous device. By its mobility, if you open or close it, if you draw the curtains, if you pull down the blinds, this simple window becomes a whole element that modifies the space, the atmospheres of the place, the experience that you have of it. But in order to offer a sufficiently rich and simple envelope, which is not an anonymous curtain wall, nor a double skin, which offers wide openings, which is acoustically efficient in a very difficult context, we had to design particularly sophisticated technical devices. In this facade, we can find again the high esteem we have toward technique. So during this project, technique was an ally, a lever, a springboard that has allowed us to reach our objectives, to give us knowledge, answers, and therefore considerable power of action. In a more general way, this attachment to technique is part of our methodological attitude. So we consider architects should behave as detectives. Since we don't apprehend architecture from an aesthetic point of view, but as a useful tool to face the numerous societal challenges of our time, we believe that architecture can be seen as an atlas of knowledge. We really believe that the most important factor in order to be an actor for changes and improvements is the way we look at the world, the way we investigate things, the way we explore our environment. So to this end, we will constantly explore all the fields in our practice and as part of our teaching. The attitude is to collect expertise. It is interdisciplinarity. It means pushing back the borders to the discipline. It means investigating, seeking to understand by all means, by numerous different ways. It means meeting people that have knowledge and who know other things than us. It means accepting everything as potential useful data, as possible knowledge that will be useful in understanding what surrounds us. It means being curious in a proactive way. It is also about doing, producing, this esteem we have toward the production is essential. So when we are faced with any situation, we systematically value the making. We consider that making is not only a way of stimulating thought, but this is a way of thinking as such. So of course, this is obvious in the models we produce at any scales, and for any occasions we make models. Here is a series of photographies of very different models, making in the very condition of the existence of all our projects. So for us, making means being able to let things appear gradually. It is building step by step a whole, unique and free. Making means creating possibilities, creating realities, creating objects that relentlessly question the surrounding world. It is drawing a topographic map of a known territory. Making is to take advantage of hesitations and ask questions over and over again. And when we produce a lot, we can see the evolution, the work at different scales. We can see how useful this attitude is to us at different phases of the project. For example, here, for the window of the residence for researchers in Paris. Models until one-to-one scale. For the last year, as André told you, we had dedicated a lot to teaching at ETH and EPF. So, and for us, it was of course a fantastic opportunity just to share, maybe to share our knowledge, but maybe this is not the thing that we really want to share, but maybe just to test and experiment and say, okay, let's try. And let's try to do all together through our teaching method and through the attitude. And we push students to have towards experimentations. We find once again the real value we give to production. Through the search for representation, materiality, solutions. But if we are adept of making and if we value important productions, we never neglect precision. On the contrary, it is a question of adapting each of our actions that to what we are doing, so that is best suits the needs of each situation. It means always going further what working on the details and therefore achieving a more consistent result. In other words, for us, tailor-made means using current technologies and diverting them. It means to achieve specificity with generic tools, where norms and rules can lead to something hyper-prescriptive. We play at deflecting those obstacles. We could say that we unstandardize standard objects. Here, for example, the plan of the New Generation Research Center, which should have been very different because of the smoke extraction standards. The imperatives pushed us to be ingenious to achieve our ends and give rise to the facade with the ETFE cushions. This question of the unstandardizing the standards and designing tailor-made projects finally joined the attachments we have to one-to-one mockup. Mockups are objects that allows many adjustments between the two grid times of a project. They are located between the ideal context of the design and the concrete context of the construction. So if something has to evolve in the future building, the mockup makes it possible to define what. it does not really serve to expose the constructive mechanics, but rather the building in a more general sense. If the mock-up is given too much importance, it is also because it gives us a head start. It presents opportunities, it gives an overview of the possibilities, and it reveals on which elements and devices it will be possible to bounce back. As the last chapter of this lecture, I would like to present you the first research and teaching topic we undertook at ETH. So probably more questions than answers, but that's also the way to try to open fields or just to have a debate. And then, so the two first semesters we have chosen to work on lightness. So the interest on the notion of lightness is probably the multiplicity of fields to which it refers. So depending on the context, lightness can have extremely varied meanings. So first, concerning lightness, it seems essential to remember that being heavy hasn't always been an insult. So there was a time when the value of an object was proportional to its density. Meanwhile, lightness was not an option that was often neither possible nor desirable. So the fabrics were thick. Good ideas were the ones that were heavy. Industry was heavy, and as was armament. And that's not to mention the beings whose heavy bodies measured power, influence, and weights. And then in the 60s, the Western world fell into the civilization of light. Ours, today's and tomorrow's civilization. Lightness was invaded our ordinary practices and reshaped our imagination. It has become a value, an ideal, a major imperative. So in this context, we try as architects to establish a definition of lightness. What does it refer to? Is lightness a form? Is lightness a weight? Is lightness a field of interest? Is lightness related to delicacy, to fineness? Is it necessary to be light to achieve performance, especially technical performance? Does lightness necessarily have a link with materials, with their physical or even chemical characteristics? How to explore lightness with students, through what research and with which tools? Does lightness have a link with economy, with space, with weight? How does it fit into the contemporary world we are interested in? Can lightness be linked to the notion of dematerialization? And in this case, in architecture, spatially, what does materialization correspond to? Finally, is lightness an attitude, a way to approach problems, issues? But in this case, is the lightness really positive? What to do with the negative aspects of a light attitude? Should we absolutely let ourselves be carried away by the general trends towards lightness, towards the utopias of light? In any case, lightness is for us the first contemporary mythology that we build within our share with the students and through our researches. We believe that the purpose of our approach as practitioners and teachers is to always reflect on the means of architecture, and we are pleased to note that the limits of the meaning that can be given to this discipline are very remote. And this architecture is something useful, sometimes useless, but it is always a precious tool to think about the world in which we live. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this lecture, which was quite special and very interesting. I hope that there is people from the audience who have questions. So I have here on parallel the YouTube channel to see if there's questions posed. And I would like to ask maybe one or two questions first to you. You said in the beginning, that was actually your first statement, that architecture for you is about storytelling, about the narrative as a kind of core message. At the same time, the architecture you do, also as you described it when we did the interview for Arch Plus together, you are searching for kind of structure in architecture. You search for the let's say the optimum of the X measures for columns and so on. So there's quite several layers in the approach of architecture as you do it. Maybe if architecture is about a narrative storytelling for you, how do you look at architecture on the long run? Huh? Because if it's about storytelling and narratives, you could understand it as maybe a phenomenon or a part of architecture which is related to our contemporary condition, to the now, to our culture, how we look at buildings and so on. So maybe a generation after us already looks completely different to it, and 2 or 3 generations later, like 100 years later or 200 years later, all these stories, narratives and so on might have lost their importance because people don't look at architecture like that anymore, you know. So what do you see then as the core of architecture if you look at architecture over 200 years, your own architecture, for instance, or maybe even ruins. For instance, if you look at Roman ruins or whatever kind of ruins, or you imagine your own architecture being a ruin after 500 years or something like that.
Thank you, Andre, for this. Let's say no, really, and that's. I mean, just to open the debate. I mean, because this is a discussion at first, and this is. I mean, in my point of view, I mean, let's say when we talk about this narrative dimension in the project is at first probably a sort of guideline. I mean, how to bring the things all together and how to create connections between different topics, questions. And so I think it's exactly, I mean, the question that when you start a competition is, of course, you can start by dealing with the constraints. And of course, you have to deal with, but it's probably not enough. You have to bring another maybe dimension. And this is this, let's say, this subjective dimension, which is quite interesting. So it's, for us, it's just a kind of, when you have this board, I mean, let's say this white page, which is quite, it's all the time the same question. I mean, how to deal with this white surface, and this is all these anxious moments. I mean, how to start, and then so you have that. I mean, that's why we like this image when we talk about this detective. I mean, this kind of investigation, how to really bring different components, different elements, and how to create. I mean, for us, it's the main question is how to relate the different topics, how to create the things, and how to put all the things all together. And one more time, I think this topic is, of course, strongly related. I mean, the 2 dimensions, this narrative dimension, and of course, the fact that you have to put the things all together and bring or, let's say, find a reason to combine the different components of the building. But I think this is maybe in a way the back kitchen or the back office. I mean, you know, how you try to deal with in your daily life or just in your practice. I mean, but at the same time, I just have the feeling that if you open the field and if you try to discuss about something, then there are some let's say, interesting opportunities, maybe to produce in another way. Though that's maybe that this is a phantasm, but at the same time, we need this kind of perspective, or just thinking that it's possible to change the rules to produce and maybe to produce in another way. So what to think about what is the RIN, how to, I don't really know about this. I mean, I think there is really two fields, and that's what we try to highlight also during this lecture, the fact that there is the moment that the project is yours, and then you can manage everything. You can, you are the let's say, you can really manage everything, and that this is your job. And then you complete the building, and then so a new life starts. Then of course that you can observe, and how the people will use the building is of course something which is quite fascinating. So what is interesting for me is not what it will be in 100 years, but how the people really find a way to appropriate how they use a building. Did we reach our targets in a way, or did we find a way to really create the conditions of appropriation of the space? That's what we did for the each time for 1 year. We go back all the time, and we ask photographers just really to catch also the mistakes, let's say. I mean, the things that don't work in a project, because of course you always have that kind of situation, a misunderstanding about you imagine the use, and then but the way that the people will really use the space is totally different. So it could be fantastic, but it could be also a kind of failure. So, and then we just have to analyze this part. So this is maybe not the most exciting part, but we have to really have a feedback, not just the feedback from the client, but just really to analyze how the people, how the building is just basically used.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I came up with the ruin as well, because you showed images of the concrete structure of several of your projects.
Yeah, you're right. No, but we have this fascination. I mean, we have to be honest. I mean, you know it, but maybe this is just. I mean, you know it. I mean, during the construction site, when the structure is suddenly appears, that's it's a fantastic moment. I mean, then you can. It's just the fact that suddenly you really feel, or you understand the potential of a building. I mean, just then. I mean, I could imagine several times we said, okay, the job is done. We can leave. I mean, in a way. I mean, because the second part is probably. I mean, let's say it's of course exciting and let's say fruitful, but at the same time, it's I think these moments and all the pictures that I tried to share today about this project of this cultural sports center in Saint-Blaise. But of course, this project in Scan, I mean, is talking about this kind of mechano. I mean, just by combining different types of material, that's a really beautiful moment and really important. So, but I'm not really sure if what is the most important thing, the ruin or just this first phase. I mean, the ruin, there is a negative aspect in the ruin. I mean, the fact that the building is suddenly, let's say, dying, or, so I prefer this positive approach, that this is the first stage of so for the future, let's say. But this is just maybe too romantic point of view.
You want to talk about life and not about death. Maybe one more question from my side. Then I switch over to the audience. A more practical or pragmatic question. In your architecture, you have a clear preference, obviously, for a set of materials. So you use concrete, you use steel, you use glass, you use corrugated sheets, for instance. And so you're very selective, so it's very modern, contemporary materials. How do you see yourself in the ever-going discussions now about, certain materials are not politically correct anymore. In Paris, they freak for wooden constructions only, and that kind of stuff. How do you see yourself? Do you intend to maybe extend your palette of materials once for whatever reasons, or do you stick as a dogma to your set of materials you use in your architecture?
No, I mean, we're not, I mean, I think you know a little bit, Stephanie and I, so, but we're not really in this dogmatic approach. And then we try to keep this positive attitude, considering that maybe just this obsession with timber structure is just an opportunity just to experiment something. So we just, the main problem right now is not the question of the material, but the way that the solution arrive. I mean, you know, I think our job, or in our practice, we have to define the right solutions. But I don't really, I think it's when you read the novel, you don't really know, you don't want to know the end of the story. And when the client start a project saying that it will be a timber structure, I mean, for me, it doesn't make sense, because we don't really know why we are doing a timber structure. It doesn't make sense. So it's just, let's say, just to communicate, or just to, you know, it was for 20 years, we have the same debate. 20 years it was with the solar panels. I mean, you know, when you had to do a competition at this moment, whatever is the topic and the challenge, you had to paste solar panels on the roof, just to, and you have to show it, because it was a political statement in a way. It was really, you have to produce energy, or so it was, but it was of course totally fake, because it was just a wish from someone else, just for political reasons, or for just for a specific communication, just this greenwashing. I mean, this is all the, so we have to deal with those questions for a long time. So, but I think there are some, I mean, it depends how the question is managed, but most of the time we don't, I mean, we're not really, of course, not really comfortable with this. And one more time, it's not the question of the, I mean, we like, I mean, the material is just a potential. I mean, like, I remember about this discussion that we had all together, Andre, when we talk about the forms, the cylinder, a triangle, a square, and I mean, and you find a way to make appears an interesting idea that this is not really the form which is interesting in our case, but more the potential of the form. So the potential in terms of typology, in terms of how to manipulate and how to use a form as a potential. And I think this is exactly the same with the materials. How to find just an opportunity just to use it maybe in a different way, or considering where each material is really performative. And then, so this is what is interesting and what is quite exciting. It's all the time the performance, how to feel the limit of the material and how to combine them. It's of course the exciting part of our of your practice, of our practice, of our job. I mean, this is what is interesting. It's just and the fact that most of the time now the money is of course the project have to be so cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So of course it's all the time a huge challenge. Even if the money or the cost is a lever really to challenge the project, there is this limit. And then I think right now in the French context, I think it's really difficult to produce projects because of this really huge economical constraint, I would say. But this is another topic, let's say.
Okay. I have some questions from the audience. I would go on with these ones. So thank you again from the person from the audience. You mentioned the assemblage of independent elements and the building's structure. With this in mind, what does the idea of the room mean to you? Do you ever view architecture in such a way? I would say the room or maybe the space. Do you, yeah, how do you look at space when you?
How we look at space? That's we don't look at it at
You
all.
don't look at it.
No, I mean we try not to think so much about space, but we try really to define the rules just to how to say. I mean, we really need a lot of time just to define the project, and during the process is all the time how not to decide, or to just to decide. I mean, just we need this deadline just to take decisions, and at the same time, all the tools that we produce or define the process is all the time just to keep this kind of abstraction, not to talk about something because we hate. I mean, we don't like to talk about something. When we start to say, this is beautiful, that's nice. And then, so this is the moment that we are not really comfortable, but because we are suddenly in a sort of cage that how to say, we don't really find it means that we are talking about really super subjective approach. And then we try not to think about if it's nice or if it's an interesting space. So we don't talk so much about space, but all the things we do is to produce spaces. So it's quite strange, but that's the way we try to deal with this question. Really, to produce tools to not talk about space, but to produce space without thinking about what it will produce. Quite complex way to explain it, but I try.
But I mean, you look at your models and you think, yeah, this space may be too low. We have to lift it up a bit or something.
Yeah, sure. But this is not the most exciting part, no?
No.
No. I mean, of course, we have the same things to manage. If it's too small, it's too big, it's too. But we just try to use all just the technique, just how to integrate those parameters to talk about the space. Now we are, more and more we try to talk about this question of comfort. But comfort, not comfortable space. So of course you can describe a space as an architectonic device, but to try to now, could we talk about the space considering the abstract parameters of a space, the temperature, the quality of the light, so all the things that you cannot really draw, and which is so difficult to talk about, but you can measure. So you can try to, so we try now really to analyze the situation. So could we talk about a space without describing a space as an architectural space, but more as a space where there are different components or parameters like the light, like the hygrometry, or that kind of things. I don't know what it will produce, but we try to know more about this, and we try to use those parameters just to conceive the spaces. I don't know what it will produce, but that's also something that we try, but it's 50 lie and 50 truth, no?
I have some more. Do we still have some time? I have another one here. Again, thank you for the great lecture. The following question: in the first half of your speech, you mentioned that flexibility means allowing freedom. Here, I totally agree with you. Which factor does the time factor play for you in this context? In particular, maintaining flexibility over time. Furthermore, your architecture deals with an offensive handling of the technical requirements of the buildings and their uses. Don't these technical specifics hinder the timeless and sustainable adaptability of your buildings? So what does the time play for you as a factor?
I think the question was really long, or because I
Yes.
spent 10 hours by watching my screen today in meetings on. So maybe there are a lot of maybe too many words in a sentence, but
The first one is maybe the time. You know, which factor does the time play for you in this context, in terms of flexibility?
there is the time that you control. That's what we were talking about, Andre, just before. The fact that during all the studies that you control the situation, so you are the master, and that's really my favorite moment, let's say. And then there is the second step. Then what is quite difficult as architects, it's really how to appreciate all the devices that you manage reach the targets that you define or not. So for me, that's the main difficult part in our practice. I mean, maybe, I mean, you know, I mean, the oldest building that we did with Stephanie, I think we completed, we did it, let's say 7 years ago. So it's nothing. 7 years, it's nothing. So what, I mean, so it's a kind of, let's say, we try to have a precise idea about what we want to achieve, but to be honest, we don't really know if we achieved in a way the targets that we define. So probably need time, as you said. So I hope not 100 years, but just to know how the people, I mean, how the building will be in 10 or 20 years. If this question, because we have this, you know, I mean, we are all of us, all the architects, we are products and products of consumption. So suddenly you are, let's say, all the buildings that you produce are published, so it's great, it's nice, and then suddenly poof, nothing, no more projects. So you know that's so this is also something which is our relationship with time is really complex, I would say. So regarding the buildings, it's, let's say, it's worse. So I wish that we will be able to watch and consider the buildings that we did as not part of style moments, but more as an architectural moment. That's all. And so I don't. Yeah, that's really hard question. I think that's a really important and beautiful question, but you know, we try to deal with in a really short time. Finally, I mean,
Yeah.
we try, but what will really happen? How to deal with this question? Yeah, of course, that's this is a starting point in our case. I mean, flexibility. We deal with this question for, let's say, 10 years, just by trying and just by trying to bring this topic. And what does it mean when you draw? It's really clear. But when you have to build, what does it mean? So this is another question. And when the building is already down, what does it mean? So this is different levels of questions. Yeah.
The other part of the question was you deal in a very offensive way with the handling of technical requirements of duct work and that kind of stuff. Don't these technical special elements hinder the timeless and sustainable adaptability of your buildings? You know, so in fact, the techniques they form a kind of part of the composition in your work, or you could read it like this. Huh? When they are taken away, what happens then? You know, doesn't matter. The microphone, your microphone, your microphone.
No. I think today maybe there is a misunderstanding, but we try. I mean, you know, and probably that's exactly the same for you, Andre, or for everyone. When you give a lecture or when you have to give a lecture, so it's a, let's say, I mean, this lecture, it's a lot of time. I mean, to prepare, to know what you want to talk about, And then so you just try to bring on the table just some topics that are important in your point of view. But this is a really, and then you try to relay the different parts. And so just about the technique, we try to identify, because we don't really have time when you do a project, you don't think about the way to think, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you try and you try to find a way, you try to combine a wish or a desire and an equation in a way. So this is the question of the client in a way, or the program, the economical equation, and blah, blah, blah. So you try to find a string or just a line to follow. And I think this is the question of the techniques. We have the feeling that the potential of this element is stronger than just to solve a technical question, you know. I mean, so this is the value that we consider. Those, yeah, this is one more time, I think, an important lever, because we like to talk about those questions. We're so deeply inspired, but at the same time, we like this. We like combining this kind of innocence, or to keep this kind of innocence, and to bring suddenly those really technical devices or questions on the table, and how to combine them, and how to I think it's maybe not the best answer to the question, but that's like this.
Maybe it doesn't matter when they are taken away and something else comes back.
Yeah. For me, it's But I mean, and then we just maybe to clarify what is technique in the building. Everything is technique in a way.
Yeah, in the end.
Is a technique. So I mean, in a way, that's the purpose also that Simon brought in the different books that you wrote. I mean, just considering what about the impact of the technique in our, also in our daily life. So so just check what you have in your hand. I mean, how this technology, so of course this is a little bit different, but can change and can have a strong impact on your daily life. That's maybe where is maybe the debate in our case.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one last question from the audience. Thanks a lot for your speech again. You said that the spaces that work are the ones that create unexpected uses for which the spaces were not designed. In this discourse, do you see yourself in a continuity with the history and the culture of the city, meaning the city of the past?
We had this chance to build this project in Caen. I mean, it's just an example, but it's maybe to highlight really what is so interesting in our point of view. When we won this competition, the client didn't know anything about really what will happen in the building, and that's really true. I mean, so they had the budget, they wanted to organize this competition, so this research center in Caen. But we won also just by saying that, okay, we just have to accept that you don't really know what will happen in the building. It will be more maybe related with this question of curation, how to use the space, and maybe considering that a building is also maybe will offer new possibilities to use the space. So it's really, that's why we use several times this word of incubator. So how a space could produce situations that will stimulate uses. And that's what is sometimes so interesting in the public spaces, in my point of view, that so you have these public spaces, and then suddenly, just because of the organization of the space, and then suddenly you can imagine different ways to use those spaces. And then in Caen, that was exactly, we tried to keep this idea, just saying that during all the studies, and of course during the construction phase, not to define exactly how to use the space, just to keep as much as possible open the way to use the space. And at the end, when we completed the building, then suddenly they started to use the building. And it was really interesting how suddenly they find they rented the space just because their financial model was really fragile, so they need to rent some spaces. And then suddenly we saw new new users, new people. And then, so for example, a dance company came because it was exactly, they needed a space to repeat or just to prepare a new dance, how do you call, spectacle, the dance. And then step by step, the people find, or also the clients find new ways to use the building. And it was, and we came several times after we completed the building, and it was really fascinating to discover the way that the people use the space, how they suddenly manage electronic music concerts and things like this. So it was really, this building is probably for me, I mean, for us, for Stephanie and I, really important, just because suddenly it was really this, we tried really not to define the way to use the spaces, and happiness, or that's exactly what happened. And this is exactly the situation. So sometimes you have some lecture, the building becomes a huge lecture hall. Sometimes you have this electronic music festival, and this is all the building, and then you have different concerts in different spaces. And so this is what is so exciting, I would say.
There's one very last question here. Again, thank you a lot for the lecture. I wonder how you work with references in your work. Do you see your projects in a certain tradition?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, we're. I mean, I don't know if we really call them references, but maybe we call them more images. But we are some obsessions. There are some images that they are so strong, or they remind in our mind. So it's just a kind of huge collection of images in our minds. So we play with this. We like to, but we like images in the fact that how to deal with an image, because we receive so much images per day. So just through internet, so you can maybe, I don't know how many images we can see per day, or in our daily life, probably 100, 200 images per day. So it's how to select, in a way, how to choose, how to classify those images. But of course, I mean, we are strongly influenced by different people, and of course, and what is, of course, really inspiring things. So we belong to a certain, probably, tradition to do project or to produce architecture, I'm sure. I mean, that was also a discussion that we had, Andre. I mean,
Indeed, yes.
no, I mean, it's not a mystery, and it's not to. Yeah, I mean, we have to break this mysterious conversation that we had before, or maybe we have to buy this the magazine to know to know the answer. No. It's, I mean, for me, it's. I mean, we don't we did not appear in the fog. So it's just that there is a past, there is different things all around us, which is not only the French context, and of course Europe is a really important context, but internet is probably the the deepest word. From where we receive the different influences. So it's, yeah, that's quite, let's say, an important condition in our way to produce, but all together. I mean, yeah.
Okay. I think the best is if you now close down the lecture and the questions. So there's no questions from the audience anymore. Once again, thank you very much for this very inspiring evening, one could say, lecture and discussion. I hope we'll see each other again soon. So I don't know if there's some things to be said, Céline, maybe about upcoming lectures or something like that. Otherwise,
I don't want to say anything wrong. So the next lecture will be on the 1st December. And if you want to be updated by the upcoming lectures, just follow our Instagram account, and then you will get notified whenever there's a lecture that we organize. Thank you very much.
okay.
Thank you. Okay. And next time I will come, and I want to see people.
Yes, we could have a nice.
I think that's nice, and to have a drink, and and
yes.
never been in Hanover more, so I want to go there. No. Okay. No, but anyway, thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Céline.